I can't believe it's been like a year and a half since I last spoke on Ed, and Eddy, but sometimes that's just how it be. But for today, we are revisiting the series for its Christmas special, Ed, and Eddy's Jingle, Jingle, Jangle. A very anti-holiday special. That'll make more sense once we get into the story of the episode. We are coming to the end of our journey of Fringemas here on the channel, as we only have one more Christmas special to speak about releasing on Christmas. And trust me, you don't want to miss that. But for today, I wanted to speak on a Christmas special that makes me feel more indifferent about the holiday the more I watch it and try to find the spirit of Christmas within it. And in case you aren't familiar with Fringemas, welcome back, or hello for the first time to the 25 Days of Fringemas, where I cover something interesting, nostalgic, or holiday related every day from the 1st of December to the 25th, in order to find that holiday spirit I lost nearly a decade ago. So if you want to be a part of this daily journey and help me find that good old jolly joy, subscribe and come aboard. We start our venture with snow falling onto the cul-de-sac, with Johnny drawing a tongue onto planks so they can catch snowflakes, which leads into a special intro, so you know it already has my attention regardless. It just shows me that the episode is a bit more special than most. A car pulls away from a house as inside we see Eddy running around dressed as a burglar looking for his presents as his parents have left. He eventually finds the presents underneath the floorboards, so he carefully maneuvers the present, deconstructing it so no one would be the wiser that he took a peek inside. But only for the first box, as for the rest of them he just destroys completely. As it turns out, all the presents contain clothes, not in particular clothes that would be considered cool, or at least cool enough for Eddy's standards. And in his fit of rage and disappointment, his flashlight gets knocked over to shine directly onto a mirror, which we all know what that means. Right, it casts a reflective light back that now shines into the night sky as if it were the North Star, ready to guide some people through the night. Anyway, everyone's favorite mouth-sore trio, the Canker sisters, takes notice of this now brightly shining symbol of bad behavior and sour attitude gleaming in the sky, and they all decide to investigate it by heading in its direction. No, that doesn't mean they just went straight up into space, which is where stars would be. They all just began to traverse the land, depicting the imagery of the story of the three kings guided by the Star of Bethlehem. Now, over at Ed's place, he destroys literally his entire house, moving his chimney into his room. As he gets ready for Santa, he sets up a nice little seat for him to sit, and some
gravy, cakes, and milk. Yum, yum, yum.
Sarah comes barging in, questioning what in the world he's doing before handing him her stocking, demanding that he make sure Santa sees it. And after some knocking sounds occur and Ed thinks that it's Santa politely asking to come down the chimney, he realizes that it was just Double D outside of his window here to wish him a Merry Christmas, who after being squeezed through a window losing his winter drip, brought Ed a flower.
Point said it.
Yeah, sure, whatever. And Ed wants to thank him with a big ol' hug. Reluctant at first, mainly due to the stench Ed has, gives in and just accepts the fate heading his way. Eddy also comes over, who is very grumpy and exclaims that he hates Christmas, while simultaneously ruining the setup that Ed got ready for Santa. He tells Double D what he did with his presents, and Double D nearly cries over the fact of the trust factor between kid and parents being broken. He tries to tell Eddy the real meaning of Christmas and the spirit of the holiday, with how it's not about the material aspect of it all, but he's, well...
That's my udder you're touching.
Eddy now wants to be adopted into a different family, one in which that will give him presents primarily not in the clothes variety. So he now stops over at Johnny's place, where for some reason all of the snow around his house is completely gone. Johnny answers the door dressed as Jack Frost and Plank as Mr. Snowflake, and decide to let Eddy in to come in and celebrate the holidays with them, after Eddy's ridiculous story of how Santa is going to be leaving his presents over at Johnny's now. But now inside, yeah, we can see where all that snow went, as the entirety of his house is covered in snow and ice, and Johnny and his family have it as their tradition of bringing winter inside. So Eddy finds some present popsicles and asks for an ice pick to break it out, but Plank don't mess around, whispering into Johnny's ear, where now a lever is pulled, sending Eddy speeding down an underground slide labyrinth like it's Mario 64 all over again. It eventually leads him to being flung out of the house, as Johnny tells him that they were both onto him the entire time and won't fall for his scheme. But that doesn't stop our little Eddy here, who now ends up at Rolf's, who at first isn't falling for anything Eddy has to say, story until he tells another story for sympathy, in which finally gets him inside of his house to take part of their family traditions. These traditions, however, are pretty different. We get a whole musical number about it. There had to be some musical aspect to it eventually for a holiday special. Eddy goes along with it as much as possible until he finds out their traditions don't equate to presents being given, so he just up and leaves. Double D, however, wants to get through to Eddy about his actions and wants to help him turn his attitude and outlook around for the spirit of Christmas. He starts to work out a plan with Ed, but in the meantime, Eddy ends up at Naz's place, who lets him in and is being particularly flirty with him, even going as far as to hold up a mistletoe, but right before the mistletoe moment, he spits out his drink all over Naz in nervousness, which promptly gets him kicked out. We check back in with the Kanker sisters, who are still just traveling for some reason, even though it usually never takes them this long to get from their trailer to the cul-de-sac, but it is what it is. In fact, they even find some odd items along the way, like some
wieners and pennies,
as well as
a goat.
So the things are going well, it seems, for them. A present now lands in front of Eddy, but it's attached to a rope that pulls it away, causing Eddy to chase it all the way up to a tree, where it turns out to be some sort of intervention, with Double D playing an angel, trying to speak some sense and truth into Eddy. But without saying a word, Eddy just destroys their whole setup, steals Double D's wings, and heads out to the next place, Jimmy's. Now, wearing those said wings, he pretends to be a Christmas angel. And with all this excitement now, Jimmy lets him in the house, and gets really ecstatic about showing him his gingerbread village that he had spent a long time putting together as a display. Eddy notices one problem though. There isn't any presents around, but there sure is a heck of a lot of food. Okay, now that's something I can get behind, but not for Eddy here. Although, when Jimmy leaves to use the restroom for a moment, upon returning, finds that Eddy, he ate the whole gingerbread display, causing Jimmy to get extremely upset and calls in some backup. Sarah, now over there, throws Eddy right out of the house and right through a snowman. Eddy now is desperate to find some form of presence, so he pleads at Kevin's door to let him in, adopt him, blah blah blah, the usual stuff he's been saying, leading him to try and even break into the house. Kevin eventually opens the door after some more begging, and he gives in and gives Eddy one of his presents. And inside was a knuckle sandwich with Eddy's name on it. Classic Kevin. Now, with all of his options exhausted, he sees everyone inside different houses, embracing the company of others and seemingly having a great time, as he's just outside, alone, left to wallow in his own misery in the cold. In his sadness and self-loathing, he walks and walks and walks throughout the winter tundra. I'll refrain from making the spiral reference again. Oops, looks like I just couldn't help myself. He stumbles upon a Christmas tree sitting alone with one of the lights on it not working. So when digging in his pockets, he happens to have an extra light that he uses to replace and fix it. It then begins to start glowing brighter than usual.
Yes, that's right. By the tree, by Naz's house. If you could come at... Oh, excellent. Thank you.
I know they're in there. Hello? Hello?
Double D and Ed come over to congratulate him for doing that, as it was an unselfish gesture that would result in no benefit for Eddy to do. Double D goes on to explain that this feeling that Eddy is feeling right now for doing so, and how it was in the vein of what this season is all about. In fact, they are joined by everyone from the cul-de-sac who have now come to the tree to celebrate the season together in a nice touching finale, as Santa flies overhead, dropping a sack of presents with all of their names on it. I would say it's a nice ending, albeit a little morally skewed based on one small selfless thing being done after such a marathon of pure degeneracy. But that's not where our story ends, as Eddy then takes the whole sack of presents for himself and runs off, with Ed and Double D in hot pursuit of him. He tries hiding in Rolf's shed, but the door is quickly knocked down by Ed's battering ram of a head. So now it's a battle of the presents, which results in them flying out of the shed and landing back in front of the kids of the cul-de-sac. But just before the night is over, the Kanker sisters show up, with everything turning into the rest of the Three Kings story, who follow the star to bring presents to baby Jesus in the manger. Yeah, somehow they unintentionally recreated the nativity scene. The Kanker sisters then try and kiss the Ed boys like usual, against their will, but the other kids just sing Christmas carols as we depart from this holiday special. Yeah, this one is a weird one for sure. As this being another Cartoon Network based property Christmas special, it definitely sets a tone all its own that isn't what you'd expect for the season. In fact, this episode, much like the show can get sometimes, goes way out of its way to point out and showcase the negative side of behavior during the season. Following Eddy's descent into into selfish madness that by the end of it results in nothing close to a decent moral being taught, despite the effort that Double D wanted to go through to help him find the real spirit. And I think why this episode sticks out for so many people is because this bad-natured based episode, within a show that often is about bad-natured things, schemes, tricks, the pursuit of success no matter the people that get steamrolled over in the process. Look, the list goes on, but it somehow feels even more bad-natured than usual. The show has never been one that focuses on the good and morally bankrupt characters. Yeah, Ed usually doesn't know any better, Double D at least tries to be the best person he can be, but Eddy, well, it's very rare that I can empathize with his behavior. Here is no different. In fact, here it's worse than ever. The acts of unkindness and complete selfishness result in a very mean-spirited holiday special. But why that's not a bad thing is that it's not glorified or rewarded in any way. That's why we get the fake out of the presents being given after one small act of being selfless, and then it gets quickly disregarded for an even more messed up tactic Eddy was trying to pull by the end of it. If anything, this episode highlights why it's bad to do these things. It only results in feeling awful and being left out, and at the end of the day, left with nothing and no joy. It doesn't make me feel in the spirit at all though. For a holiday special with no real push for the good in the Christmas spirit, it stands out as an interesting take on how to do a holiday special. But in that example, it doesn't fill me with joy in any way for the season. I kind of just feel a bit more jaded in a way. I don't know. I do like this episode. Heck, I love the show, even when it does get really mean-spirited at times. But here, in the holiday special, during the season, as I'm looking for that joyous feeling, it just didn't do it for me. But let me know your thoughts on this episode, or heck, the show in general, in the comments below. Another T. Call S-C-O-T-T. Call Scott? What's this? Phone number. Okay, let's give it a shot.
Make the call. Jordan, find Scott.
Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Follow me on Twitter, or else I'll find your presents before Christmas and replace them all with flyers to New York comedy shows. I'll see you tomorrow with another video for my next day of Fringemas. Check out the playlist to keep up with the month, but until then, later.